Welcome to Politics and More. I'm Jeff Rowan, and in this vlog, I'm going to be talking mostly about politics, but any issue that enters the broad public discussion is fair game here. Today, I'd like to talk about, of all people, Mitt Romney. Sometimes an interview, a brief interview, or a superficial comment from a politician can tell you a world of information about who he is and about the broad political arena that we live in. And so it was when I tuned into Fox News Sunday yesterday and listened to the interview with Mitt and Ann Romney. Now, of course, the conversation turned at some point to the campaign, the shortcomings of Romney, and what happened, what went wrong. So Chris Wallace asked him to do a little autopsy on the campaign, and what came up, among other things, was that memorable moment during the debates when all of the Republican candidates were asked, would you accept a 10-to-1 ratio of spending cuts to tax increases? $10 of cuts for every dollar of tax increase. They all shuddered at the thought, were horrified, piled up all over each other to run away from that idea. No, we won't accept even a penny of tax revenue. So here Mitt Romney was. The campaign is over. He's a free agent. He can tell us whatever he wants. Chris Wallace said, wasn't that a moment when you could have stood up and said, of course I'd accept 10-to-1. That would be an incredibly good offer from the Democrats. I waited eagerly to find out what Mitt was going to say. What did he say? He said, well, nobody would offer us 10-to-1, so that's not even. So first of all, he dodges the question. He won't even answer the question, and goes on to suggest that if he had accepted that idea at the time, everybody would have said that he had flip-flopped. You mean that was the first time he had flip-flopped on everything else? So what's interesting to me is, A, he wouldn't answer, even now that the campaign is over, he wouldn't answer the question. But even more importantly, 5 minutes earlier during the interview, he had been criticizing the president, saying that if he, Romney, were president, he'd have Democrats and Republicans together. They'd be fashioning a grand compromise together, and they'd be finding great common ground and working out of the sequester. Well, my question is, how are you going to find a compromise if you won't accept a 10-to-1 ratio of cuts to taxes? Where's the compromise going to come from? So here again, we have Mitt Romney talking out of both sides of his mouth, not willing to take a principled position on anything, and really not willing to acknowledge any responsibility himself for the shortcomings of his campaign. The interview then moved on to the question of the demographic time bomb that is ticking in the face of the Republicans. The country is getting browner. The Hispanic population is increasing enormously, and pretty soon there's going to be an enormously large group of African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, and women, all of whom are fleeing the Republican Party. So what's the answer, Mitt? Well, we have to improve our messaging, he said. We have to improve our outreach. We have to build bridges to those communities. Well, that sounds fine, Mitt. That's what I hear from every Republican when they're asked that question. But what ideas, what programs, what agenda do you have that is going to attract a Hispanic voter? For example, are you going to renounce voter ID laws that were geared to suppress the vote in minority communities? Are you going to renounce those efforts? No, I don't see any chance of doing that. Are you going to enthusiastically embrace the Violence Against Women Act and show that you're foursquare behind the safety of women? No, because it's clear that the Republicans stonewalled that bill for 14 months before it finally passed last week. Are you going to enthusiastically support a reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act? No. The Republicans are very happy to see any voting rights protections for the African American community go away. So what exactly are you going to use to engage these communities? I still haven't figured that issue out. So what I got from this interview is that Mitt is Mitt. Mitt is the same person now that he was a year ago. A guy who really can't take a principled position on anything. And the Republican Party is the same party that it was a year ago. A party that has an aversion to compassion and has very few ideas that are going to engage the emerging minority communities. It's going to be tough sledding for the Republicans from now on. Talk to you next time. I'm Jeff Rowan.